Evening, folks. Today's date is Monday, January 26, 2026. My name is Brian Gunderson from the province of British Columbia, Western Canada. I'm starting this new platform I'm going to be calling Canada Strong, the Resistance, to bring focus and awareness to the impending military invasion threat to Canada by the Trump administration of the United States. Now, I, like other Canadian content creators such as Charlie Angus, Midas Touch, and others, are standing up for our country, Canada, strongly, and to promote, by whatever measure and means, to defend our sovereignty, identity, and freedoms. In the event that Trump follows through with his threats of a forceful takeover of our country, in which I, others, the Canadian government and then the Canadian military are taking very seriously and are planning for. Now, before I continue, I need to tell you about two dreams I had 14 years ago. One dream, and I clearly still remember, were of American tanks on our Canadian streets, neighborhoods. They weren't blowing up the place, but clear visions of American tanks on the streets of our Canadian neighborhoods. My second dream. My second dream, I'm put back into the Canadian Armed Forces, in which I served briefly. And in that dream, to which I still remember 14 years later, I'm sent back east. I'm separated from my wife and daughter by a great distance. There's no communications. I don't know where they are or how they're doing. Now, I'll come back to my dreams a little bit later. Let's talk about Trump. Trump has made it very clear his intention to take Canada by force, by economic force first, to quote him, to bring Canada to our knees and to annex Canada, which is to threaten our sovereignty, identity, freedoms, free healthcare, and everything else that we are so proud to have. And he repeatedly says he doesn't need anything from Canada. Let's go through the list of the things he does not need that he absolutely is dependent upon Canada for. He is dependent on our heavy oil from Alberta, to which his refineries are specifically built and tooled for. The U.S. is dependent on our natural gas to power their power plants and heat the U.S. American homes. He absolutely needs our uranium to replenish his nuclear power plants and his nuclear-powered aircraft carriers. He needs our hydropower for the Northeast United States to the water for the Pacific Northwest. And more importantly, his farmers absolutely need our potash so they can grow food for the American people. Without that potash, America will not have dinner on their dinner plates. The only other major suppliers of potash is Belarus, to which he sanctioned, and Russia. Putin will decide whether or not America has food on their plates this year. Now, having said all this thus far, if this is because of the looming pole shift, which is one thing that every single other YouTube creator is not mentioning, and if this is why Trump is going to be doing what he's going to be doing, he's not going to back off, he's not going to stop, he's going to carry through his threats in this takeover of the Western Hemisphere. So let me explain. I am also the owner, creator of my platform I call Geomagnetic Earthwatch, which is the study and monitoring of Earth's geomagnetic poles, the current geomagnetic excursion, the probable coming pole shift, and so forth. I don't want to waste too much of this introduction video into that. One thing I want you to take into consideration. Now, this is what we call the pole shift map, how the globe is going to look after a pole shift. If you notice that Greenland becomes larger in size as it's going to rise out of the ocean, therefore increasing its land mass, and ice melt. To give you another perspective, the subject of the pole shift is during the reorientation of the globe, in which Greenland will be readjusted closer to the equator, not on the equator, closer to the equator. America will be placed in a less habitable zone. Canada will be in a more favorable zone. Hence the reason why Trump intends on seizing and taking control of Greenland, in which the ice mass will be melted, as well as Canada. Now, if you want to know more about the pole shift and the geomagnetic excursion, you can find the same face also on YouTube and Facebook and Telegram under the name Geomagnetic Earthwatch. Let's continue now. Before I go any further, so it's just me. I'm an independent researcher. I've been doing this for quite a few years. I have no team of assistants. I have no moderators. I have no high-tech people. Nothing. This is what you're going to get. You're going to get knowledge. Now, we're going to start off with what I believe Trump's strategy is. Now, his primary objective is Canada. He will try and seize and take Canada. However, he's going through in these steps. Now, this is not his strategy. He's too stupid to come up with this kind of strategy. So there's other people involved. Step 1. The so-called narco boats, which are not narco boats, and seizing Venezuela and their oil. He's doing that to gauge the global response, if anything. That's step 1. Step 2 is Greenland. He will take Greenland, probably due to the coming pole shift, but also with the primary objective of breaking apart NATO. That's what he wants. If there is no NATO, there is no Article 5 when he goes to Step 3, Canada. Stay on Step 2, Greenland. He wants to try and break apart NATO so nobody can respond to Article 5. That's his secondary objective for Greenland. He has to do that first before going on to take Canada. Timeline? Months to a year, in my opinion. Then he will try and take Canada. He's going to continue with his threats. He is trying to bring us to his knees by economic force, which is not going to work. It will put us in a better position with all the cards and him leaving with no cards, as you're beginning to see the world turning against him and towards Canada. Now we'll talk about the Monroe Doctrine. So what he is doing is not the Monroe Doctrine. He's creating his own version, as he calls the Monroe Doctrine, which is economic and military control over the entire Western Hemisphere, from the Arctic all the way down to the southern tip of South America and everyone in between, including Canada, which is not going to happen. What are some of the things that he can do? How about a naval blockade on both Western and Eastern Canadian coasts to prevent the import of Chinese products, for example? What are some of the things we need to watch out for? So towards the end, when he's ready, the mobilization of enough U.S. military troops along our southern border, that's not going to happen yet. Again, he needs to dismantle NATO, and some of the NATO countries are going to evict the American armed forces out of their countries, which is preferably exactly what Trump wants, because he needs to bring his forces and naval forces back to home waters and homelands first. What's the tripwire? The second in command of NORAD is always a Canadian general. The 2IC NORAD is a Canadian general. When they remove the Canadian general and all Canadian staff from NORAD, that is the tripwire. And as I get down to this talk, I came across another news flash, which indicates we might be a lot closer to that tripwire. So I try to keep this talk in a chronological order, but I may be doing a little bit of a jumping back and forth. Now, that is what I believe the U.S. administration's strategy against Canada. Now, I'm going to tell you what Canada's strategy will be. So the head of the Canadian Armed Forces, a female general, is in the process of fairly quickly trying to formalize a 300,000 strong civilian army for the purpose of protecting Canada or after a U.S. military invasion. This will include a 5-day training period and the purchase and the training in the use of Ukraine drones. Now, the Canadian Armed Forces is going through a hypothetical American invasion planning, a defense against Trump in the event of a military takeover of Canada. Now, we all know that the American Armed Forces can take us out in approximately 2 days, our military bases. We also know that Trump will never take Canada because of their resistance. So what our Canadian military is planning, based on their experience in being posted in Afghanistan, fighting the Taliban, is to adopt a guerrilla warfare tactics, as well as hit and run assaults, sabotage, and so forth, to inflict mass casualties upon American forces. To put it in another language that perhaps you'll better understand, to kill as many Americans as we can, and we would. Our forces are not going to stick it out knowing that we'd be wasted and slaughtered. We would relocate into a predetermined wilderness where we know how to survive and blend in, later to return to inflict the mass casualties upon American forces. It would be like the French resistance during the Second World War, along with the formation of those 300,000 civilian armies. I can assure you, there are many ex-Canadian Armed Forces personnel, regardless of their age, who are so eager to volunteer. Canada does not need to formally form a 300,000 civilian army. If only 1% of the Canadian population volunteers, that's 400,000. If only 10% of the Canadian population volunteers, that's 4 million. Scattered throughout the second largest country in the entire world, in our forests, in our mountains, in our Arctic, where we know how to live and survive, hunt for food, and so forth. Entrap American forces and slaughter them. So next, I'm going to briefly talk about Canada's purchase of the Saab Gripen fighter and not proceeding with the purchase of the American F-35. First, it's solely our decision. not by the strong arming and threats of the United States. We are going to purchase the Gripen for our own sovereignty and northern defense, not by the strong arm and threatening dictates of the United States. Let's go through some facts. The F-35 would not be a purchase for independent and sovereign use. It would be a forced lease by the United States to be dictated and controlled by the U.S. You see, the United States controls the software, upgrades, parts, maintenance. We would not be allowed to do these upgrades ourselves. We wouldn't even have control over its tech or even to maintain the aircraft ourselves. The United States demands that our hangars be upgraded to house the F-35s, which needs pampering and environmental controlled hangars. They demand that we spend billions to do that for something they expect us to purchase. First of all, the F-35 is not suited for our cold Arctic environment. Repeated examples in Alaska resulted in 23-minute, 18-minute, and 16-minute startups, procedures for scrambled tests. Our current older CF-18s do it in 4 minutes, flat. And secondly, we're better. The F-35 system freeze at -40. Up there, up north, it's -50s, at least, on a continual basis. The F-35s break down. We would have to wait for the Americans to come in with their technology and spare parts at their leisures. In fact, we don't even have the access code to open up the access panels. Now I'm going to give you some more facts and a correction. First of all, the United States is full of shit when it says we can't operate more than one type of aircraft. I grew up through the Air Cadets. We would go to CFB Comox and just stay there for a week at a time. You know, we had the CF-101 Voodoos at the same time. We had the 104 Starfighters flying side by side, no problem. Why? Because we're better. Let's go over some costs. It costs between $35,000 and $47,000 per flight hour for the F-35. In comparison, it only costs $8,000 per flight hour for the Saab Gripen. The F-35 needs manicured, heated runways. It takes a crew of between 13 and 30 crewmen and 3 hours to rearm and refuel the F-35 for a new sortie. It takes a crew of 5 and 10 minutes for the Gripen. The Saab Gripen is designed for our northern environment. The F-35 is not. The Gripen can land on icy runways and even roadways. The F-35 would crash. And we're better. The U.S. is pushing both Canada and Denmark to purchase the F-35. Why? Because these are the two countries they want to take over, and they have the kill switch. They can turn off any F-35 in the entire world at their will. That's why they want us to have the F-35, so when they're ready to take us, they can turn them off. Finally, the Gripen would be built here in Canada and would give us 12,000 jobs. We would have total control of all the technology, the software, full access. They also give us permission to build the Gripens for other countries. While I do my notes for this video, I came across a disturbing news article. Let's go through it. So the U.S. ambassador from the United States to Canada, Pete Hoekstraat, has been pressuring Canada to buy the F-35, and according to a recent report by the CBC News, the U.S. ambassador stated, "Buy our F-35 jet or else. If you don't buy the F-35 from us, then you can expect the United States military to operate freely in your country, borderline saying, we will invade you. So this is from the CBC News. NORAD would change if Canada pulls from the F-35 order, warns U.S. ambassador. NORAD would have to be altered. Remember what I said, evicting the 2IC, the Canadian general. That's what he's talking about. U.S. Ambassador to Canada Pete Hoekstra told CBC News in an exclusive interview at Luke Air Force Base in Arizona. The United States would fly into Canada airspace to address threats approaching the U.S. If you don't purchase the planes, the F-35s, from us, if you purchase those planes from Sweden, then we will deem Canada incapable of helping to protect the United States. And that constitutes a national security threat to the United States and would enable us to operate our military freely in your country. Go back and listen to what I just said about the comparisons between the useless F-35 and the better Saab Gripen. And listen carefully to his threats to enter Canada airspace upon their own free will after they remove Canada from NORAD. Let me take you back to one of my dreams about the American tanks. I came across this article by Stephen Ben-Nun of Israeli News Live.
Do it. Yes, he will. And according to my intel source that I have out of the Middle East who now resides in Canada, he also claims that Trump would be willing to send military tanks into Canada. But he said he feels like that what Donald Trump will end up doing is that he will actually eventually just, that Canada will actually surrender peacefully and become part of the United States. Listen to what he said.
I can tell you the statement about the tanks is probably correct. I can also assure you the statement that Canada would surrender is absolutely foolish nonsense. I guarantee you, I promise you, not one single Canadian would surrender to the American forces. I can also assure you that there will be lots of blood spilled on Canadian streets, forests, mountains, and they're not going to be Canadian blood. It will be American blood. Now, the Americans will also have no choice but to kill Canadians, which, as it looks like right now, with what they're doing in Minnesota, executing civilians, what they think they would do to Canadians. Let me explain to you something about my second dream. So in November 2018, I had to stop my work as a handyman because I developed degenerative disc disease of the spine, arthritis throughout my body, especially my knees, my thighs. I was a cripple. I couldn't walk 2 feet without my canes. I had canes downstairs, canes upstairs, canes in my truck. I had canes anywhere. I couldn't go anywhere without my canes. And then something happened about a year ago. I don't need my canes anymore. I can run up my stairs. I can run. Some of you have seen my videos where I go for hikes up a mountain without my cane. Something's happened to me. Being prepared. So of the second dream until a year ago, I thought, they wouldn't take me back. I'm just an old man cripple. I can't even walk. I can assure you, there's a great many old guys, former Canadian Armed Forces members with superior knowledge and skills who would gladly volunteer. We can do something. We can do a lot, including inflict mass casualties upon any opponent trying to take our country. Canada knows this. This is why we're doing what we're doing. There will not be any NATO to come to our aid. It's up to the individual countries, like France, with a lot of tactical nuclear warheads. You see, last year, France made a scheduled visit with their Navy. They brought in one of their nuclear submarines underneath the water, and it surfaced in the middle of the Halifax harbor. He did that to send a message to the United States. Don't fuck with Canada. You fuck with us, and we're nuclear armed. Trump is going to go that far. Nothing and nobody's going to stop him. He stated, seeing the military in all the cities looks nice to him. That is his objective. He is going to foment, he is going to create the conditions to necessitate martial law, control the civilian population, so they cannot revolt against him when he makes a move on Canada and Greenland. We are taking his threats seriously, and we are preparing. I talked to my wife for the first time yesterday about it. It's the first time I told her about my 2 dreams. And I told her if I had to, I will put her and my wife on a plane and send her back home to Indonesia to spend the rest of their lives while I stay here and defend my country and cause mass casualties, as I'm still able to do so. Believe what you will, if you're a Canadian, you're taking the threat seriously. Unfortunately, I think many Americans don't realize what's going on up here and how far we're willing to go. Are you willing to see your sons and your daughters, your brothers and your sisters, your mothers and your fathers killed because of one man on this administration? Are you willing to see, over a long period of time, mass casualty events? Just like in Vietnam, Afghanistan. That's all, folks.